give your flowers a little bit here, man. You're a killer trainer when it comes to this business, and this recording is going to be used a bunch of times, I know, because we're going to have a good conversation for folks. And I just appreciate your friendship.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here for sure. The
Do I
numbers
need to
numbers never lie.
do I need to
You
step my
do
game up
do we
here?
gotta
I
do the
don't
blue?
know.
Listen, it's the blue light glasses. We're supposed to be. I need yours because mine reflect the screen and it makes me a little self-conscious. Yours don't.
Let's trade. Let's see if this
Okay, we'll just
works.
switch
I don't know
bronze.
if
No,
AI is real.
not yet. We'll get there. We'll get there. Oh man. So let me say one thing because we had a bunch of new people and somebody said earlier that they were like studying for their test. I have been in this industry for a while. I worked at a carrier. So my initial entry to working with Symmetry was I was their first wholesale rep at SBLI. And I took that job just to work with Quility. I was in between jobs. The One of the executives at SBLI said, "Hey, go watch this YouTube video. And if you think that you like this account, we want to hire you to manage it." And I saw in the video was Brandon and Casey doing a Todd talk with Tom. And I was sold. I was like, that's it. I don't know who those three guys are, but I want to do whatever they're doing. And so I've worked at a carrier. I've been an agent myself, even here at Symmetry. I was direct to Andrew Jimenez for a little bit in between some NDA type of things. And then now I work at corporate. That test is easier than you think it is. Nobody is going to care if you got a 93 or an 83 or a 73. As long as you can say you passed it, you can make money here. And you can now get to the things that are going to help you make money, which we're going to talk about today. But if you're studying for that test because you're studying like you're in school and you're like, I want to get 100, I want to get an A, there's no A. There's a pass and there's a fail. And if you've been studying for a little bit, you probably are already ready to pass it. So if you're holding that weight on you going in the holidays where you're like, oh, I'm so nervous about this test, all you need is a passing score. No one's gonna ever know what you got. So I just want to take that weight off of people as they're studying going into the holidays. That don't use the holidays as a reason that you need to study longer.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like most of the information anyways that you learn on that exam, you don't need it. You don't need it. We teach y'all how to do things with integrity from day one. So most of that test is rules and
100%.
regulations and fees and all that stuff. But yeah, no, thank you for saying that. Michael, we didn't really prepare for this call, which I'm excited for. I guess now that comment is recorded. But every time I hop on the phone with you, I'm just like, man, I wish I would have hit record. So
Well,
it's
I
just gonna
think I think that has a good transit because when we spoke last week, one of the things we were talking about was the business owner hat and the salesperson hat, right?
Yep.
And you're brand new, your business is a business of one right now. And even if you have maybe two or three people, really the business is on you, right? So if you're in a position that you're like, I just joined, congratulations, you're a business owner, you have this thing to build, but until you get your insurance license, you can't be a salesperson for your business. And so you can't actually make money for your business until you pass that test, until you get your license and you get your stuff done. And even if you are building right now, nobody on your team, unless you're like above an AO, right? And nobody on your team can make your business as much money as you can. I think people sometimes get distracted by that. Like if you just started, you have an 80% contract rate. Nobody can make your business more money than you because everything you write, you make all the money, right? And so if you're looking to kind of get off the ground and get started, acknowledging and accepting that's so important, right? Like one of the things that I see a lot of agents struggle with is that sales component. They get really excited about the business ownership. They really want the time flexibility. You want to be with the family, especially now, the holidays, right? This is the perfect time to have your own business. I stopped by my best friend's house, running some errands this morning, and he wasn't there. He's a mechanic. He owns his own business, four car garage, and I stopped by his house. He wasn't there, and I called him. And I was like, what are you doing? You're not at work. And he's like, I don't have to be. And then I was like, well, where are you? And he's like, I'm on my way to Vegas. And I was like, you're going to Vegas? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to Vegas for Thanksgiving. Right. But 12 years ago, he would have been in that garage today. He'd have had a line of cars sitting in the yard and he would have been working. Right. And so I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is like, how do I balance these apps when I'm new, where I want to build and I want to do all the fun stuff and I want to learn about all these advanced markets and things. But at the end of the day, like my business needs me to sit down, make some dials, send out some text messages, and run some appointments. That's like for most people, that's what your business needs right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll dive into more of the ownership versus salesperson stuff. But like as I look back at the last 4 years, year one was probably, and I started building from day one. If a lot of you don't know my story yet, while I got licensed in June 2021 and spent that whole year still working at the dealership. So I was doing this very, very part-time. And during that year, I didn't sell a ton of policies, but I did recruit a little bit. I ended up recruiting my wife, Kate, and that was the best. That was my first hire, best hire. We're business partners now, so that one worked out really well. But during that year, I recruited. So Michael, I walked in month one, I believe 5 riders very first month, which is it's not normal, but we had a vision for this that we wanted to build an agency. But still, my first year, let's look back. Year one, it was probably 95-5. 95% we made on our own pen in production, 5% we made on overrides. Talking about like total income split.
Yeah.
Year two was probably closer to 70-30 at the beginning of the year, closer to 60-40 by the end of that second year. Year three started out probably 50-50, got closer to a little bit closer to, 40-60 by the end of the year. And then, at the end of year three, we're thinking it's probably smarter if we just take a cut in income now and double down on really scaling this agency. And the reason why say take a cut on income is because when you stop producing and you're at a 115 or 120 level, you're taking a pay cut if you're going to do that. So I don't recommend doing that until you're at the 125 or above. It just doesn't make sense. Why, if you're making 120% on a sale, you could do that 4 or 5 times a week and have a $200,000 plus a year salary versus, running interviews all week. So I love the building side of this business, but I know very well, and Ashley taught us this from day one was you need to production is your recruiting tool. It's going to fuel your business. It's going to pay your bills. It's going to pay for you to be able to scale this thing. So get really good at production first. And I was like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Luckily, Kate was really good at production because she started in the field before me and taught me a lot. But yeah, that was the vibe.
It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference when you're first starting off, being able to put some money in your business, right? Because then you can start to play with your time and you can start to play with your building. If you're spending, this is why I focus so much of our sales and engagement training on predictable and efficient processing, right? Because what you don't want and what a lot of people suffer from is huge swings in this business. They do a $20,000 month and then they take a month and a half off. And then they have a couple chargebacks. And then they come back and they don't have a great month, so they make 5K. And those huge swings are what put you out of business. If you can write predictably 5K a week, like I want to do some math with you guys. If you do 5K a week, that's a $20,000 month. Okay. If you do 20,000 a month for a whole year, Scott, how much money is that? 20,000 a month every month for a whole year, 240, right? Like that little 5K a week, if you can consistently do it every week, puts you making almost $250,000 a year in this business. That doesn't even include anything you do building. Now, what you really need to focus on, though, and this is why people struggle sometimes, is that they figure out the most inefficient way to make 5K a week. And then when they want to increase their income, it feels like there's just no more levers to pull, right? Like you're like, man, I'm already doing 600 dials a week and I'm already spending $700 on leads and I'm already working 40 hours a week. And you're like, I just don't know how I do more. And for some people, it's just bad habits. It's that you learned some bad habits, and you figured out the most inefficient way to do the part of the job that you probably don't want to do, right? Like most people don't want to do the dialing, they don't want to do the
Oh
texting.
no.
Sometimes the appointments are fun when you get to work with people who really appreciate and value what you're doing for them. But that's not every appointment. What's exciting is what Scott gets to do today, right? Scott's, you see his face light up when there was the trophy, and he's like, yes, right? Like what's exciting is when you're doing the things with the people around you and everybody is winning. The exciting part isn't spending the time dialing every week, but those are the necessities we have to do, right? So
So
if you're
so
only
I
spending 40 hours, go ahead.
I felt that way from day one. I actually, I mean, put a three in the chat if you absolutely love dialing, because I haven't met a person yet that absolutely loves doing it. Not saying that you wouldn't have fun. I know Rod, you have fun. Wilbur, you have a ton of fun dialing. Sabina, I haven't heard your dials yet, but I'm sure you have a ton of fun dialing too. Okay, a bunch of you are proving me wrong here. Anyways, okay. Hey,
No,
actually, you know what?
what they mean, hold on, Scott, because what they mean, because Giovanna said dialing becomes much more fun when you learn objections, which comes in time. She doesn't enjoy dialing. I would arguably say that she does not enjoy sitting there dialing and getting her phone call not picked up over and over. Nobody likes to sit through the mental fortitude of people not picking up your call. What she does enjoy is she does enjoy the interaction she gets when people do pick up. And so that's what dialing sessions are. Dialing sessions are a mental battle for a period of time with nobody picking up and nobody picking up until somebody picks up. And then you have this moment of joy where you actually get to talk to somebody. You get excited because you're telling them what you do and how you can help their family. And then you book that appointment, and we're right back to the boring.
Yep.
Dial, dial, dial.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just actually Giovanna's going to be a good example for this. I won't talk about my own journey. I'll talk about hers, but watching her move now is really what most producers want to get to. And the reason why, go back to what Michael just said, why you need to find a really efficient process that helps save you time and give you time back in your calendar so that you're not spending the majority of the week doing the thing that you don't like the most. Which for me that was dialing, 600 dial weeks. I knew I had to make them happen, Michael, and I was willing to do them because it was the necessary activity to get to where I wanted to go. First and foremost, I needed to make money. My back was up
Mm-hmm.
against, well, I turned off job and turned on this full time. I needed to make money. So I would have done whatever it took, even if that was double the amount of dials. But where Giovanna's at now is a really good example because you'll listen to her dial. And what she said about objections was she's really good at overcoming objections now, so dialing is more fun, obviously because she's getting more results from those calls. Instead of booking 2 out of every 10, she's booking 6 out of every 10. Of course, that's a lot more fun, right? Because you're getting results. So I think getting good at this skill is going to make it a little bit more enjoyable. But the other part of Giovanna's business that has changed since she started, and a lot of other top producers on the call, Giovanna's elite though. So I do need to point that out. It's one of my favorite words. Giovanna's elite. She only makes about, Giovanna, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, about 175 dials a week tops,
Yeah, that's about average.
right? Books 15 appointments, writes 5K every single week pretty much. So that's really what I'd like to talk a little bit with you about, Mike, which is how do we become more efficient business owners in our production week? How do we own those things? How do we get better at that?
So, first thing, let's set an expectation. Giovanna, are you working digital or A leads right now?
I'm doing A leads, my
There we
favorite.
go.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So if you're on this call and you heard her say she works 175, this is why I love numbers, because taken out of context, numbers can either hurt you or they can help you. If you just heard an elite producer does 175 dials a week and you walked away thinking you doing 200 dials means you're doing good, that's all relative, because you might not be working the lead she's working. You might not have that same income goal that she has. You
Right.
don't know how many hours she spends doing it, right? So for most agents, here's what I recommend starting with. First, start with your budget and write that down on a piece of paper. And then look at that number and ask yourself, if I did not make money for 4 or 6 weeks, would I be comfortable spending the same money every week? So if you said my budget is $200, I would ask you, could you spend $200 every week for 4 or 6 weeks if you didn't make any money? And if you say, well, no, I thought I could make money like as soon as I get licensed, then I would say you can. And that does happen. But you understand that everybody comes here with some amount of learning that needs to be done. If you've never worked in sales, that's a whole thing you have to learn. If you've never worked in life insurance, that's a whole thing you have to learn. And if you don't know what an A1C is, you might have to learn a little bit of health stuff, right? We have different lead options, we have warm market options, but one of the worst things you can do when you first get started is try to buy your way to success. Is come here and say, I'm going to spend $500 a week. And then in 2 weeks, you're like, Scott, I'm in $1,000. How come I haven't made money yet? My wife's bugging me about the bills. I might have to go look for a job. And if you've ever seen that picture of the two people that are mining away and the guy that quits right before the diamonds, that's a lot of agents here. A lot of people do not give themselves enough time to get good at this. And so they spend a lot of money up front. They put themselves in a difficult financial position, and then they just have to quit because they feel like they got to go get a job. My
Yeah.
favorite analogy for this is a food truck. I love this analogy. Maybe it's because I like food, but typically, who starts food trucks? People who already love and know how to cook, right? And why do they start a food truck? Because it's a mobile business, it's very flexible. And did they typically make money immediately? No, because they spent thousands of dollars on a truck. They have thousands of dollars invested in food. They had to buy an account solution. They got to buy a cash register. They will run that food truck until they almost have to file bankruptcy before they give up on their dream of owning their own restaurant. And a lot of people don't treat this opportunity as the same, right? Like this is a business opportunity that can change you and your family's life, but you got to set the right expectation up front. You got to be willing to invest in your business every week. You got to manage the time and the money to make sure that you can have the time to grow it. So that's the first recommendation. Is like figure out your budget and make it a realistic budget that you don't feel pressured to have to leave in 2 weeks. Because you might make a sale. It might take 2 or 3 weeks to make a sale. Also, by the way, a sale is like $1,100 on average. So it's not like you make a sale and it's nothing. From there, you need to work with your mentor within that budget to figure out the most amount of activity you can get per week. This is the second mistake I see a lot of people make is they take their budget and they buy too few resources. Personally, what I recommend most agents is that if you're buying bonus leads right now, you should be buying 40 to 60 bonus leads a week. Now, take that budget and make the numbers work, right? So if you say, Michael, my budget is $100, first of all, let's make sure it's really $100. And if it is, then you need to be buying like $2 leads because
Yeah.
we need you to have 50 people to call. Most new people who feel the animosity that they think they're bothering people, you might be because you might not be working enough leads. If you feel like you're bothering people, it means you don't have enough people to call. You don't have enough resources to be dialing, right? So the first problem some people have is they just don't have enough resources. If you're buying 50 leads every week, you got plenty of people to call. You are not bothering people by making those calls, right? This is why the investment of leads every week is important. You can't buy 50 leads and then next week say, well, I still have leads left over from last week. No, you got to buy more because some of those people are going to pick up the phone in 2 weeks. Some of those people are going to pick up the phone in 3 weeks. So 40 to 60 bonus leads within your budget to give you enough dials. The next thing is the activity. You can't just buy leads, call them 2 times, and then say, well, they're not answering the phone. I'm going to move on. We're not buying leads every week so that we don't work the leads. We're buying leads every week so we have a lot of activity to fill. Right? And typically what I recommend there, 400 to 600 dials a week. If you think that's a lot of dials, For people buying that amount of bonus leads, it's not. And this is why I said the numbers matter. For Giovanna working A leads, she is not buying that quantity of A leads. She's buying a different quantity, and that A lead is a different quality. Somebody asked in the chat, like, what do I mean by optimizing your sales process? Giovanna's a perfect example, right? She's got an income goal, and she's been working and working and working to figure out exactly how many A leads to dial. So she knows exactly how many leads she's buying, how many dials she needs to do, and she has a predictable income result. And she's narrowed that in. 175 dials does not take a lot of time to do. Right? So she has a lot of time for family. She has a lot of time for business. And guess what? If something was coming up and she said, you know what? I want to take a big trip next summer. Do you think she could double her effort if she wanted to? Of course. It's not hard to go from 175 dials to a little over 300, right? But that's something that she built up to, right? So 400 to 600 dials a week. If you're not doing 400 to 600 dials a week, you probably don't have enough resources, right? So those are the two problems. Do I have enough resources, and am I doing enough activity on those resources?
Yeah, all that looks like is you're going to triple dial your leads when you're buying bonus leads, and you're going to work your way through a single lead in a week 4 times. There's your 600 dial. That's 600 right there. So triple dial each time you reach out to them. You reach out to them 4 times in a week. You could do 3 times. You could do 5. Okay. But I would shoot for an appointment set goal at first. You want to get to that. You want to have activity based goals first. First and foremost, the thing that you want to master in your week is how can I get to 15 appointments set? And if that takes you 400, great. If that takes you 300, great. If that takes you 600, 650, that's what it takes to get to that point. But having enough resources is super key.
Here's the thing that I've been recommending to a lot of people that I think make a big difference, and I've seen it make a big difference for quite a few new agents. When you're scheduling your dial time, so I'm a pull Scott here. If I opened up your calendar right now, and on your calendar, your dial time, the block of time on your calendar for dialing says either dials, dial session, or dial time, put 2 in the chat. Be honest. If your dial time on your calendar currently says dials, dial session, or dial time, put 2 in the chat. Okay. I appreciate the honesty. Here's what I would recommend to you. Start putting a goal on every dial session. And if you don't hit your goal in the dial session, you have to ask yourself why. So for instance, the first goal I would put is a dial number. I say 50. If you were dialing for an hour and nobody picked up the phone, could you get through 50 dials? And put that on your calendar. Book your dial. This is a big mistake a lot of people make. They book the dial session for themselves, not for the person that needs to sit down and do the dialing. What do I mean by that? If I put on my calendar at 2:00 on Wednesday, dials, and my best friend calls me at 2:00 and says, hey, you want to go grab lunch? Am I going to do the dials or am I going to go grab lunch? I'm going to go grab lunch.
Yeah.
Because it's my dial session. I just skip it. I'll make it up later. But if I look at my calendar and I say, nope, that hour is accounted for. I'm supposed to do 50 dials. My goal was 500 for the week, and that's 50 of it. I'm not going to make it up later. You need to book your dial sessions like you're booking it for somebody else. And you need to put a goal on that dial session to hold that dial session accountable. Because if you get to the end of your dial session, you're like, I did 20 dials. Oh, man. How come I only did 20 dials? Well, if I book 2 appointments, that's a great reason not to get 50 dials. But if I booked no appointments and I made no contacts and I only called 20 people, that's the perfect definition of an inefficient dial session. So back again to the question about how do we get more efficient, you have to start tracking and holding the accountability. Because think about this. If you could do 50 dials in an hour when nobody answered the phone, that means in 2 hours, we're doing 100 dials. So if you just dialed for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, you're doing 600 dials. That's the math. It sounds like it's crazy because then if I asked you, now I know this is going to be a hard question. If somebody said, Michael, I'm full time, and I say, great, how many dials are you doing? I'm doing 600. Okay. So that's 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's 12 hours. What do you do with your other 38 hours a week? Right? If you work this full time, like a 40-hour job, you got 12 hours in dialing. What are you doing the other 38 hours? That should be growing the business, running appointments, bringing on new agents. Should be a lot of fun activities in that. Dials do not take as much time as people think. But one of the things you have to do is you have to prepare. You need to be very organized. Scott was really good at this. He was very organized in Switchboard. If you're very organized and ready for your dial sessions, you will have very efficient dial sessions. If you don't make your first dial within 3 minutes of your dial session starting, you were not ready for that dial session. That's people do not understand the mental strain that it takes to dial. So they just put 2, 3 hours on the calendar. They just look at their calendar. They're like, oh, I'm free from 2 to 4. I'm dialing from 2 to 4. No goals, no objectives. They kind of mosey into the dial session. Well, I get done what I get done. I would encourage all of you not to do that. I would encourage you to hold yourself to a 1 hour dial session and make sure that within the first 3 minutes, you've made your first dial and put a goal on that dial session. It could be 50 dials, it could be 2 appointments. I think the dial goal is a little easier because if you're doing the dials, the appointments will come. I'd rather see you have an appointment goal for the week, like Scott talked about, and a dial goal on every single dial session in your calendar.
But you got to name it because like as of right now, raise your hand if you're self-employed. Self-employed folks? Okay, cool. So self-employed means you are the employee of your business. There is so much beauty in that freedom. This is why I came to Cemetery. There's so much beauty in that freedom. But if you schedule yourself a dial session, it'd be like me hiring an employee and you didn't show up to that dial session with intentionality. It'd be like me hiring an employee for my business and them showing up to work and clocking in, but deciding to do absolutely nothing for that hour. And when you can shift that mindset that you are that business owner and that your employee is you for that hour, and you're looking at it through that lens, you're going to get a lot more out of yourself. I promise you. This is like more of the adapting that owner mindset, which was hard for me early, Michael, because I came from a W-2. Most of my business walked in the front doors every day or called us and said, hey, can I get a quote? Right? I was
Yeah,
selling boats. They were either walking in, hey, can you show me that boat? I saw it on your website. Or they would call and say, hey, I just talked to 2 other dealers. Can you give me a price? So now I'm like transitioning to this business. I'm accountable for every hour. So can I be specific enough to say, this is what I'm doing with that hour? And show up to work. And at the end of the week, I want to look back and say, did I do the amount of work that it called for throughout this week? Like, did I show up? If I were my own boss, would I hire or fire myself after this week?
yeah. I I think for most newer people and even people who've been here but they're still trying to figure things out, if you can pull that move where you can hold yourself accountable as the sales employee, remember until you're like an AO, you have the biggest contract for your business. That would be like if I hired a bunch of employees and I put my number one salesperson on the bench and was like, "Hey, you're so good. I'm only going to take you out when I really need you. I'm going to wait till the game is on the line and then I'm going to put you in the game." Like, no, your business needs cash flow to grow and you make your business the most amount of money. So treat it that way. Schedule your dialing time as if you're scheduling it for a dialer. Like if Scott hired me to dial for him and he hires me, he has an expectation. Michael, I'm hiring you for 2 hours a day. I have an expectation of you doing this many dials in this time. And then he's going to, what? He's going to give me leads. He's going to make sure that those leads are organized so that when I sit down to dial, I'm ready to dial. Like Scott's going to take care of all of that. Scott's going to make sure there's leads, they're organized, and that there's goals around the dial time. What's my job as the dialer? Show up and dial the leads.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, Scott's going to come to me and he's going to like, hey, I gave you everything. What's the result? And if I was like, oh man, I only did like 20 dials and I didn't even get through all the leads,
Yeah.
is Scott going to keep me on as a dialer? No.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. So just recapping here, guys, we talked about budget, and like I've really never heard anyone talk about it the way that you do, Michael. So I appreciate that. I think that probably made a lot of our newer agents feel comfortable that are like first time investing into themselves in their business. But you also talked about like outside of that, having enough resources. So if you have a lower budget, getting a higher amount of leads, maybe a little bit deeper in the lead scale. G and
Yep.
H leads. If you have a higher budget, you're looking at C's and D's at the beginning and moving up to B's and C's. So scale that accordingly. We talked about activity. What's the best way to maximize my activity with 40 to 60 leads? We talked about we talked about what your week should look like as a full-time employee in your own business and how to stay accountable within your time block. So I think really packed into about 30 minutes. Great resource for a new agent. So I can't wait to get this recording up on our site. But Michael, finish us off with this. What's one thing that you're super excited about coming up here? Leave us on a high note.
I'm excited for Ignite, man. I There's two big events every year, Ignite and Conference in Denver, and you can plan the entire success of your business around those two events. I remember talking to Scott, and I want to say this because this is really smart of Scott. You guys don't know how awesome Scott is. Scott's such a great leader. Scott and me spoke prior to the last conference. And I said, Scott, when's the 130 run? And he's like, I think it's coming in summer. And I remember us having this conversation. And then I checked back in with him closer to summer. And I was like, Scott, are you ready for the 130 run? And he said, I know we're ready. The numbers are there, the team's there, it's time. And then he hit 130 right before conference, right? So, like, if you really keep track of your numbers, if you ask for the help, first off, when you ask for help, you got to give the numbers, right? Like you got to keep track of you got to have numbers to get mentorship. If you keep track of your numbers, you ask for help, and you plan your business around Ignite and Conference, you could have huge, huge upside.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And that's wisdom. That's wisdom. That's all we have time for. We can
All
hang
right,
out
guys.
for hours, Michael, but I
Of
appreciate you, bro. Thank you for coming on today. Everybody have a great
course.
Monday. And if I don't see you before Thursday, have an awesome Thanksgiving. Love you guys. See y'all.